What's up, guys? This video is for Dave and Nathen, who have been asking me about a waste oil pool heater due to the high cost of the practice of heating large bodies of water. And using an economically viable fuel is definitely a goal a lot of people have in mind. So this is kind of what I'm proposing here. I don't have all the components put together, but essentially we would have this style of waste oil burner because it's the most compatible for the job. This is a low air, high heat device that has this secondary vaporization chamber that pretty much burns all of the oil without a whole lot of noise. There are other ways to do it with high airflow systems, but they're extremely loud and they're kind of energy intense as far as the compressed air goes. So essentially what I'm proposing is having the burner set about this far away from the heat exchange. We would have a shroud around this area, obviously, and it would be best if that shrouded area was a water jacket. We might not make one quite this big, but it would probably be beneficial to do so. So let me show you what we got going here. So our number one best option would be to have the flame going into an IR flame tube here. It's got some holes in it, a little bit of fire would be coming out of those holes, but this element would glow red hot, and that would throw far more heat into this heat exchanger than just a flame shooting in here alone. So this right here is going to be the best setup of all. A red hot flame tube would emanate far more heat, because once you get above 500 degrees Fahrenheit, the predominant mode of heat transfer shifts over to IR infrared heat. So having a flame tube on the end of the burner inside of this secondary chamber, the burner would be able to just slide in and out of this. We would want to make sure we got a tall enough draft tube to ensure that would happen properly. If not, we would have to put a, because we want the air to naturally draft into this little gap here. Killing my marker, but you get the point. So we might have to put a stack on this thing, you know, that's couple of feet tall to get that natural draft action going, and that would pull in the secondary air that's also needed to burn these little tiny flames, because these little tiny flames are going to be attempting to burn in a choked out area. There ain't going to be a whole lot of oxygen in here unless we get some airflow coming in through the back in this little gap right here. So something like this right here is going to be most likely the best setup. The fin tube would work, but I'm really worried about ash production and that getting a white ash covering up this fin tube. It would work amazing for a while, but cleaning off fin tube is not something you really want to ever have to do. They're really not made to be cleaned. If you spray them too hard with water, they'll bend up. A garden hose can bend those fins, so something to think about. This heat exchange was sent back to me by a pool heater buyer. It was damaged in shipping, so I'm just using it as an example. But you can see the fin tube is kind of intricate there. A little bit of damage right there. I had to comb that fin. But this could become clogged up if we weren't careful. So this is kind of what I'm proposing. I have never ran one of these like this, but I think if we dealt with the ash issue, this might work. We might even be able to do this without any fins, but the water jacket idea may potentially be better because we don't have any fins to get clogged up with ash. This setup is what I use on the diesel heaters. So this would slide over to the front of a torpedo heater, and essentially this would heat the pool. So we would use this in tandem with a water jacket that encases this area here. So that's kind of how that would go. And we could talk about the ignition procedure and all that. We would have to leave this burner setting on something in a way that maybe we could rotate it to get it lit, because when you first go to light this, a small puff of atomized oil is going to come out of the front unless you get it lit, you know, the exact second that the oil begins to atomize, and that's not always possible. There's going to be half a second of a little bit of oil spray coming out of this, and we certainly don't want to get that on the fin tube. So maybe having this set up to where it is allowed to articulate just that little bit, so we could turn it this way and light it, turn it back that direction, and start heating the heat exchanger. So that's kind of what I had in mind for this process. I think that would be a good start. I am a little bit worried about this fin tube getting fouled out because waste oil is a pretty dirty fuel. But as long as we make sure this thing's running at the right combustion level, it should be okay. I haven't seen any real significant buildup on the flame side of this. Most of the ash would take place in here. So let's take a look at some other details. All right, so here we are. We're at about 242,000 BTUs of heat right here. Pretty big flame, but it's not a whole lot of air. We would want to be using a lot more secondary air. This is the lowest setting that I can get it to run at without ashing up really bad. This is about 150,000 BTUs. So still a substantial amount of heat. For contrast, the smallest salamander heater they sell is 90,000, and the largest is 220. So we're well within that torpedo heater spectrum of power output. The flame that I think would be the best would be a high fuel, high air, which is this setting right here. We're using a lot of air. That right there is probably about 40 cubic foot per minute of air input. And this would give us a really nice, good combustion. You see that white ash that's on that brake rotor? That's the white ash that I'm worried about fouling out the fin tube heat exchanges. There I've reduced the air a bit. So I'm not saying it will happen on high air. I haven't done any testing. It would be a risk, and they're not cheap. So that's why I suggest the water jacket style heat exchange, because we'd be able to clean it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's a flame like that right there going into a secondary heat tube, an IR heat tube, or flame tube as it's called. And I think that would be the optimal configuration for sure. That's a pretty good flame right there also. So maybe have a 1 foot heat tube inside that water jacket with about a 3 or 4 foot flue on it, kind of like a rocket stove. Should give us some pretty good draw over that outer jacket. We don't want to be cooling that jacket off with water though, because that outer jacket. So that white ash that you see on that brake rotor is from direct flame impingement. So I feel like as long as we didn't have direct flame impingement, we might be okay. And as I said, that fin tube is super efficient. You can actually put your hand on that thing. But then again, we don't want to foul it out. Waste oil is an extremely dirty fuel. Very dirty stuff.